Are you ready to discover the secret fear that chilled the immortal heart of Zeus, the king of Olympus, the very god who toppled the Titans? Good, then settle in. Forget everything you think you know about Greek mythology for a moment. You know Zeus defeated Kronos in the decade-long, cataclysmic Titanomachy, casting the elder gods into Tartarus. Victory seemed absolute, unchallenged, and everlasting. But what if I told you there was one name, one shadow from that forgotten age, that could still make the golden doors of Mount Olympus tremble? One titan, not of brute force, but of a quiet, chilling power that Zeus himself never truly mastered. The power of foreknowledge. This is the untold legend of the single titan who held a unique, terrifying leverage over the almighty Zeus. A leverage rooted not in rebellion, but in a devastating, inescapable truth. Our titan is Prometheus, the forethinker, the most cunning and insightful of the titans. The real source of Zeus's terror is a terrifying prophecy, a whisper from the lips of Gaia herself, the primordial Earth Mother. A prophecy not about Zeus's defeat, but about his downfall. The curse of succession. Just as Kronos was overthrown by his son, Zeus too would one day be toppled by the son of a woman he loved. Zeus, terrified by this vision of his own end, became obsessively paranoid, determined to evade fate itself, constantly seeking the exact identity of this future son and his mother. But the threads of fate are notoriously hard to grasp. And here is where our titan, Prometheus, steps from the shadows into the blinding light of Olympus's secrets. Though Prometheus had been punished, and punished severely, for his audacious, world-changing gift of fire to mankind, his suffering was a smokescreen. The real reason Zeus kept Prometheus bound and tormented on that Caucasian peak was not just revenge for the fire. It was something far more essential, far more desperate. Prometheus, due to his inherent foresight and unparalleled cosmic knowledge, held the singular, terrifying key to Zeus's survival. Prometheus knew the mother. He knew the identity of the sea nymph or goddess, the one whose womb would carry the child destined to unseat the mighty king of the gods. He possessed the single piece of information that could halt the tragic, inevitable cycle of succession and ensure Zeus's eternal reign. The agonizing truth is this: Zeus, the supreme ruler, was completely and utterly dependent on his prisoner, the titan who was eternally bound to a rock with an eagle tearing at his liver. This dependence is the true source of Zeus's fear and the most subtle, brilliant hook in all of Olympian mythology. It is the perfect, cosmic checkmate. If Zeus freed Prometheus, the titan might flee and keep the secret forever, leaving Zeus to blindly pursue countless lovers, always wondering which one carried his doom. If Zeus killed Prometheus, the secret would die with him, guaranteeing that one day the prophecy would be fulfilled. The king of the gods was trapped by his own power and his own destiny, and the only person who held the lifeline was his eternal enemy, a being he was simultaneously punishing and desperately relying upon. This profound paradox is what kept the terror alive. Every thunderbolt Zeus threw, every decree he issued, was overshadowed by the silent, mocking knowledge of the chained titan. What was the nature of this secret? It wasn't just a name. It was a complex weave of conditions, a cosmic instruction manual that Prometheus had pieced together. To gain this secret, Zeus would have to do more than simply demand it. He would have to yield a part of his absolute authority. The clock was ticking because Zeus, being Zeus, could not stop pursuing lovers. With every new affair, the odds of birthing his own downfall increased. The air on Olympus was thick with the scent of fear, and that fear had a name: Prometheus. The true hook. The prophecy involved a goddess Zeus dearly wanted, an entanglement so desired that he was willing to risk everything, even his throne, to possess her. The irony is excruciating. His desire was leading him directly to his destruction, and only the despised Titan could save him from himself. The goddess in question was rumored to be the wise, powerful, and formidable Thetis, a nereid whose beauty was matched only by her strategic mind. Zeus pursued her relentlessly, consumed by both lust and a desire to consolidate power. Every step he took toward her was a step closer to the abyss, but his passion was a divine force he found impossible to control. The tension was suffocating. Zeus had to know. He had to stop himself. And so, the negotiations with the chained Prometheus began in secret, a desperate, humiliating exchange veiled from the rest of the cosmos. Zeus could not afford to show weakness, yet his very existence depended on bending the knee, figuratively, to the prisoner on the rock. The next layer of the story involves the messenger sent by Zeus, an emissary who had to bridge the impossible gap between the height of Mount Olympus and the depths of Prometheus's despair. Who was brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to carry the king's desperate plea? And what was the price Prometheus initially demanded? We must peel back the layers of fire, suffering, and eternal torment to find the fragile, terrifying truth at the core of this cosmic secret. What was the first condition the chained titan laid down for the king of the gods? And why did that single demand shake Zeus to his very core? We'll uncover that unsettling answer in the next chapter of this deep, mythological sleep journey. The humiliation was unbearable, a venomous taste in the mouth of the king of the gods. Zeus, master of the cosmos, was trapped by a single, burning desire: his pursuit of the sea nymph Thetis, and his profound, crippling fear of Gaia's prophecy. He knew he could not stop his immortal affections. The fire in his veins was too strong. He was a force of nature, and destiny was using his own nature against him. The whispers among the lesser gods were growing louder, a subtle, dangerous current beneath the thunderous facade of Olympus. They didn't dare speak of the prophecy, but they spoke of the king's obsession, of his relentless, reckless courtship of the formidable Nereid. Every new moon brought a fresh wave of terror. Is she the one? Is this the child who will cast me into the black silence of Tartarus? The anxiety was so profound that it began to erode his judgment, making his thunderbolts less precise and his decrees more volatile. It was unsustainable. He needed the name. He needed the one absolute truth that only the chained intellect of Prometheus possessed. But Zeus could not go himself. To descend to the crag, to stand before his eternal prisoner and beg for his life's secret, would be the ultimate act of self-betrayal, the public admission that his victory in the Titanomachy was incomplete, that his reign was built on a foundation of terror, not true power. No, the deed required an intermediary, someone with the speed to traverse the cosmos and the diplomatic detachment to carry the king's desperate plea without revealing the full extent of his panic. The choice fell, inevitably, upon Hermes, the agile messenger of the gods. Hermes, the god of transitions, travelers, and trickery, was the perfect envoy. Fast, loyal, usually, and perhaps the only one who could handle the caustic wit and glacial fury of the forethinker. The mission was cloaked in the utmost secrecy. Hermes was given a complex, agonizing instruction. He was to offer Prometheus a deal, a reduction of his torture, perhaps even a future conditional release, in exchange for the single vital name, the mother of Zeus's destined downfall. This wasn't a simple bribe. It was a cosmic negotiation of life, death, and eternal power. Hermes, though bound by duty, felt the immense weight of the task. He knew the pride of Prometheus, the righteous anger that fueled his enduring torment. He knew that any offer short of complete, unconditional freedom would be met with scorn. Yet he descended. He flew past the sun-drenched peaks of Olympus, down through the cloud layers, until he reached the desolate, wind-scoured cliffs of the Caucasus. The air there was thick with the scent of suffering and ancient, unyielding defiance. Imagine the scene. The bright, golden-winged god of youth and speed facing the immobile, suffering embodiment of ancient intellect and fate. Hermes landed, his presence momentarily distracting the vulture that habitually tore at the Titan's flesh. He approached Prometheus, not with the arrogance of an Olympian victor, but with the measured respect one shows a deeply wounded, yet still infinitely dangerous, foe. The silence was deafening, broken only by the whistling wind and the metallic grinding of the Titan's heavy chains. Prometheus spoke first, his voice a dry, rasping rumble, yet carrying the profound authority of ages. He didn't ask why Hermes had come. He simply stated that he had known the messenger was coming for millennia. This immediate, terrifying display of foresight immediately unnerved Hermes. confirming the true, mystical nature of the Titan's power. Hermes quickly delivered Zeus's carefully worded offer, detailing the clemency and the potential for eventual freedom. He spoke of the king's mercy, a word that tasted like ash in the mouth of the Titan. Prometheus listened, his face impassive, his eyes never leaving the young god. When Hermes finished, Prometheus slowly, deliberately, began to laugh. It wasn't a sound of joy or madness. It was a cold, cutting sound of absolute cosmic superiority, a dry, rattling acknowledgement of Zeus's utter weakness. Prometheus dismissed the offer of clemency as a cruel joke, a meaningless trifle compared to the knowledge he possessed. He knew Zeus's fear was not of simple rebellion, but of inevitability. The price for simple freedom was nothing compared to the price of stopping fate. He declared that his suffering was, in fact, his greatest power. For as long as he suffered, Zeus remained dependent and terrified. He then revealed the true price of the secret, the terrifying demand that would shake Zeus to his core and prove the Titan's mastery. Prometheus demanded nothing less than a complete, fundamental shift in the cosmic order. He did not ask for his chains to be broken immediately, nor did he ask for a throne. His demand was far more profound, far more political, and directly aimed at the hypocritical foundation of Zeus's rule. The Titan demanded the restoration of honor to all the defeated Titans, a formal acknowledgement that their struggle was not simply a war of good versus evil, but a tragic, necessary phase of cosmic evolution. More specifically, he demanded the immediate, unconditional release of one of his brothers, a figure whose freedom would be a direct challenge to Zeus's authority and a symbol of hope for all those still languishing in Tartarus. He named a Titan who represented the very spirit of endurance and rebellion, a figure whose absence was vital to keeping the Olympian peace. The Titan Prometheus named was Atlas, who carried the heavens upon his shoulders. The demand was a masterstroke of political warfare. Freeing Atlas would not only signal weakness but would destabilize the entire celestial order, potentially allowing the heavens to fall, or at least setting a precedent for challenging the victor's justice. Hermes, listening to this demand, felt the true weight of Prometheus's cunning. He flew back to Olympus with the terrifying news, leaving the Titan chained, but utterly victorious in the first round of the cosmic negotiation. Zeus received the report with a thunderous silence, his golden hall seeming to dim. He could not free Atlas. The stability of the universe depended on his imprisonment. Yet, he could not continue to pursue Thetis. He was trapped. Prometheus had found the perfect, inescapable dilemma. The price was not just a name. The price was Zeus's authority. He had to find another way to extract the secret, a way that did not involve yielding to the Titan's impossible demands. And so, the king of the gods turned from diplomacy to deception, from negotiation to ruthless planning. He began to search for a loophole, a hidden clause in the ancient laws that might grant him the secret without paying the unbearable price. He sought counsel not among his loyal Olympians, but in the darker, more mysterious corners of the cosmos, where the original rules of creation were kept. He began his search for Chiron, the wise centaur, the one being in existence who possessed the ancient knowledge of both the Titans and the Olympians, the only one who might suggest an alternative path to the forethinker's secret. But what was the hidden connection between Prometheus, Chiron, and a voluntary act of sacrifice that could break the chain of fate? We'll uncover that unsettling alliance in the next chapter of this deep, mythological sleep journey. Zeus's rage, initially a blinding thunderbolt, quickly cooled into a meticulous, calculating fury. He would not yield to Prometheus's audacious demands. Freeing Atlas was a non-starter. The chaos that would ensue would expose a weakness far greater than his dependence on the Titan's secret. The entire celestial edifice, the hard-won order of the Olympians, was balanced on the enduring suffering of the defeated. He had to find another way. He was the king of the gods. Surely, there was a hidden clause, a forgotten pact, a piece of ancient lore that offered a solution outside the rigid dilemma Prometheus had engineered. He needed a mind that bridged the past and the present, someone who understood the primordial laws of the Titans as well as the newly established rules of the Olympians. His search led him not to a palace, but to a quiet, verdant cave deep in the heart of Mount Pelion, the dwelling of Chiron, the most revered of all centaurs. Chiron was unique, wise, gentle, immortal, and tutored by Apollo himself. He was the only creature whose loyalty spanned both the old world and the new, the perfect confidant for a dangerous secret. Zeus, cloaked in a disguise of shadow and silence, descended into the centaur's sanctuary, an act of profound humility and desperation. He revealed the entire, terrifying tapestry of his fear, the prophecy, his obsession with Thetis, and the impossible price demanded by Prometheus. Chiron listened patiently, his ancient eyes reflecting the gravity of the king's confession. The wise centaur confirmed the terrible truth. Prometheus's knowledge was absolute, and the price, while political, was cosmically sound. The Titan had indeed engineered a perfect trap. However, Chiron then paused, stroking his thick beard, and introduced a concept that Zeus, in his Olympian arrogance, had completely forgotten: the power of substitution. The cosmic laws, Chiron explained, were not always about transaction. They were sometimes about balance. Prometheus was not asking for a trade, knowledge for freedom. He was asking for a release, a condition for his release. To secure the secret, Prometheus himself did not need to be freed by Zeus, but rather relieved of his immortality, which was the true root of his endless suffering and his leverage. His immortality meant his punishment was eternal. His mortality would mean the end of his torture and, crucially, the automatic release of his cosmic obligation to Gaia's prophecy, which would then be free to be spoken. But who could take the Titan's place? Who could voluntarily surrender their immortality to Tartarus, thereby creating the necessary cosmic imbalance that would force a resolution? The law was clear. Only one immortal could substitute for another in a cosmic exchange of fate. This was the loophole, a tiny, almost impossible gap in the Titan's masterful trap. Zeus immediately dismissed the idea. What immortal would willingly give up eternity for the sake of the king's throne? Yet, Chiron spoke of a third party, another Titan, whose history was intertwined with both Prometheus and a desperate wish for release. Heracles, a name that would only appear much later, but whose fate was already being woven. No, Chiron pointed to a different potential sacrifice, a being who was simultaneously immortal and desperately seeking release from an unbearable, endless ailment. Chiron named himself, but not for Prometheus. Chiron's own body was afflicted by a wound that could never heal, the result of an accidental arrow dipped in the Hydra's venom. As an immortal, he suffered ceaselessly, unable to die, unable to live free of pain. He yearned for release, a release that only the surrender of his immortality could grant. This suffering, this deep, constant desire for an end, became the second, even darker layer of the cosmic loophole. Chiron explained that if he were to renounce his own immortality and pass it on, it would create a cosmic surplus of life that could be transferred. This transfer, he speculated, could potentially free Prometheus, not through Zeus's decree, but through an act of divine mercy sanctioned by the cosmic balance itself. The exchange was complex, involving a third party, a mortal hero who would bridge the gap between gods and men, and a voluntary act of suffering. The plan was audacious, requiring the convergence of three separate, tragic destinies: Prometheus, the suffering prisoner; Chiron, the suffering healer; and a yet-to-be-born mortal hero whose legendary deeds would eventually bring the plan to fruition. Zeus listened, his mind racing. This was not a quick fix, but a complex, long-game solution that would preserve his pride and his power while still securing the secret. The plan hinged entirely on Chiron's selfless offer and the future actions of this unnamed hero. The challenge now was twofold. First, convince Chiron to go through with this incredible, painful sacrifice. Second, find the mortal hero capable of completing the task that would trigger the exchange. A task that required a strength beyond any ordinary man. Zeus realized that his focus had to shift from confronting Prometheus to manipulating the fate of this future hero. He now had to actively ensure the rise of the one man who could solve his Titan problem. Who was this mortal hero? And what monstrous labor would he have to perform to secure the freedom of the chained forethinker? The threads of fate were now moving not just between Olympus and the Caucasus, but toward the destiny of the greatest hero the world would ever know. We are getting closer to the secret mother. But the price demanded by fate is proving heavier than Zeus ever imagined. Zeus returned to Olympus, his mind no longer consumed by blind panic, but by the cold, intricate blueprint of a long-game strategy. The plan was terrifyingly elegant, relying not on his own might, but on the tragic nobility of others. He was no longer just the warrior king. He had become the architect of fate, subtly manipulating the destinies of three key figures: Prometheus, the holder of the secret; Chiron, the giver of the sacrifice; and the yet-to-be-born mortal hero who would act as the cosmic trigger. The immediate challenge was the hero. The task required a strength that transcended human limits, a capacity for monumental labor that would justify the immense cosmic exchange, the surrender of one immortality for the freedom of another. This hero had to be a demigod, a child of Zeus himself, ensuring that the necessary power and divine interest were vested in the quest. The cruel irony was not lost on Zeus. To escape the prophecy of his downfall, he had to actively father the instrument of his salvation. He had to create the very conditions for his own eventual security, even if that meant risking the creation of a child powerful enough to potentially turn against him. But the threat from Prometheus was immediate, while the threat from a future son was conditional and distant. Zeus began to scour the mortal and divine realms for the ideal mother, not the one who would bring his doom, Thetis, but the one who would birth his savior. He needed a woman of immense resilience, noble lineage, and a connection to the royal houses of man, ensuring the hero would be grounded in mortal endeavor. His focus settled upon Alcmene, the wife of the hero Amphitryon, a princess of Mycenae famed for her beauty and her unwavering devotion to her husband. Alcmene represented the perfect intersection of divine bloodline and mortal dedication. Zeus, employing his mastery of deception, visited Alcmene while Amphitryon was away at war. He disguised himself completely, taking the exact form and likeness of her returning husband, even commanding the sun to pause its course, stretching one single night into 3. A divine testament to the importance of the act and the incredible power he poured into the conception. The result was the demigod who would grow to be known as Heracles, the glory of Hera, a name given with wicked irony, and the mightiest hero the world would ever know. The birth of Heracles was not merely a romantic interlude. It was the essential first move in Zeus's long chess game against fate and Prometheus. The child was born with a destiny already burdened by necessity. His life's path mapped out not by choice, but by the desperate needs of his divine father. The hero's life had to be one of constant, impossible labors that would temper his strength, demonstrate his divine purpose, and ultimately lead him to the Caucasus. Zeus understood that the exchange required a heroic deed so monumental that its value in the cosmic balance would outweigh the transgression of freeing Prometheus. This deed was none other than the slaying of the bird that tormented the Titan and the subsequent breaking of the chains. This required not merely strength, but also the willingness of Prometheus to receive the aid, which, of course, the Titan would only grant once his specific terms were met. But the terms of Prometheus were about freedom for Atlas, which Zeus could not grant. The plan now had 3 interlocking conditions. 1. Prometheus must agree to speak the prophecy. 2. Chiron must willingly surrender his immortality. 3. Heracles must complete the monumental labor and find the necessary cosmic exchange piece. The missing link was a final, crucial detail provided by Chiron: the need for a mortal human substitute to bear the consequences of the exchange. For the cycle of life and death to be balanced, someone had to willingly step into the void of mortality created by Chiron's release. This intricate, almost impossible requirement was the final lock on the secret. Zeus now had his hero, but the price of the secret had grown exponentially. It required not just a massive heroic deed, and not just the sacrifice of a friendly immortal, but also the voluntary acceptance of death by a mortal man who was willing to die to grant Chiron his freedom, thereby triggering the entire mechanism. The king of the gods was orchestrating a massive, multi-generational play, where the lives and deaths of mortals and immortals were mere pieces on his chessboard. The stage was set, the hero was conceived, and now Zeus had to wait. A terrifying period of inaction, for Heracles to grow and fulfill his destiny. But as Heracles grew, he would face trials initiated not by fate, but by the spiteful rage of Zeus's wife, Hera, who recognized the threat in the illegitimate child. Unknowingly, Hera's hatred would actually serve Zeus's long-term plan, forging the very strength needed for the hero's final, essential labor. The tension now shifts to the childhood of Heracles, the deliberate trials and tribulations that molded him into the tool Zeus needed, and the specific moment when Chiron would pass on his sacred knowledge to the young hero, setting the stage for the final act on the Caucasian peak. The conception of Heracles was a masterstroke of strategy, but the hero's childhood was a battleground forged by cosmic spite. Zeus had created his savior, but his enraged queen, Hera, immediately recognized the divine threat inherent in the bastard child. Her hatred was relentless, and yet, in the most profound twist of fate, her vengeful trials would become the very crucible that forged the strength and resilience Zeus needed for his grand plan. Hera began her campaign swiftly and brutally. While Heracles was still an infant, she sent 2 massive, poisonous snakes slithering into his cradle chamber. This was a direct, murderous attempt to eliminate the potential usurper. But the snakes were not merely a test of life and death. They were a demonstration of divine destiny. The baby Heracles, instinctively recognizing the threat, clutched the serpents with his tiny, powerful hands and crushed them effortlessly. A scene that terrified his mortal parents and announced his preternatural, terrifying strength to the world. Hera's malice was relentless, but every obstacle she threw in the hero's path, from the wild beasts he was forced to fight to the jealous rage of men, only served to temper his soul, sharpen his reflexes, and build the legendary might required for the final labor on the Caucasus. Zeus watched from Olympus, a silent, conflicted spectator, knowing that his wife's hatred was, paradoxically, his most effective training regimen. The years passed. Heracles grew into a young man of unparalleled physical power, yet his mind needed shaping, needed the specific, ancient wisdom that could only be imparted by Chiron. It was necessary for the hero to understand the cosmic weight of his actions, not just their physical execution. Thus, Heracles, like many great heroes before him, was sent to Mount Pelion to study under the wise centaur. It was here, amidst the silent, green sanctuary of Chiron's cave, that the true, terrifying nature of his destiny was finally unveiled. Chiron taught Heracles the arts of archery, philosophy, and war, but his most crucial lessons were steeped in the lore of the elder gods, the deep, unforgiving laws of the Titans, and the secret history of Prometheus. Chiron spoke of the Titan not as a defeated enemy, but as the cosmic jailer of Zeus's own fear. He explained the prophecy, the impossible dilemma Zeus faced, and the necessity of the triple sacrifice required to break the chain of fate. His own immortality, the mortal's voluntary death, and Heracles' perfect, flawless labor. This was the moment of transfer, the passing of the ancient baton. Chiron revealed the precise location of the Caucasus crag and, most importantly, the specific, arcane weakness of the Titan's chains. They were not simply metal, but magical bonds woven with the spirit of the mountain itself. The chains required not just brute strength, but an arrow tipped with a specific, powerful venom, the Hydra's venom, which Heracles was destined to possess later in his labors. The knowledge was intricate. The hero must first slay the venomous creature, collect its poison, and only then could he approach the rock. This intricate, almost ritualistic requirement highlighted the cunning of Prometheus, who ensured his freedom was tied to a monumental, fate-driven quest. The education was complete. Heracles was no longer just a strong demigod. He was a cosmic assassin, a precise tool forged to execute a plan that would save his father's throne at the cost of Chiron's eternity. Heracles left the sanctuary, armed not just with a club and bow, but with the full, terrifying weight of Zeus's secret anxiety. His path was now clear. He had to complete the labors imposed upon him by the jealous king Eurystheus, another twist of Hera's influence that Zeus subtly guided, to acquire the necessary tools, including the Hydra's venom, and prove his worthiness to the cosmos. But the ultimate test was not the Hydra or the Nemean lion. The true test was the psychological warfare waged by Prometheus. Would the Titan, even with his freedom in sight, willingly give up the secret to the son of his tormentor? Prometheus's final act of defiance was yet to come, a subtle trap buried deep within the very words of the prophecy that would once again stall Zeus's plan and force a final, agonizing confrontation. What was the final, critical, and misleading piece of information Prometheus deliberately withheld, even from Chiron, that would make Heracles' final approach to the Caucasus Peak almost impossible? We will reveal that last layer of Titan cunning in the next chapter of this deep, mythological sleep journey. Prometheus was a master of the double bind. His entire plan hinged on forcing Zeus to pay a political price, freeing Atlas, or a moral price, allowing Chiron's sacrifice. But the Titan was too shrewd to rely solely on the cosmic law known to the centaur. He held back one final, critical piece of information, a contingency known only to him, designed to ensure that even if Zeus found a loophole, the victory would not be swift or easy. The answer to our previous question is this: Prometheus withheld the knowledge that the final breaking of the bonds required the consent of the earth itself, Gaia, whose prophecy was the origin of the entire conflict. The chains, Chiron had rightly observed, were woven from the spirit of the mountain, a daughter of Gaia. For the final, liberating blow to be struck, Heracles needed not only the strength and the venom, but a specific spoken plea to Gaia for her blessing, a ritual that went against the core Olympian rule of conquest and defiance over the primordial deities. This final condition was Prometheus's last line of defense, a psychological barrier that ensured that even in his freedom, the Titan reminded Zeus of his ultimate, ancient source of power. Meanwhile, the years flowed like the rivers of the underworld. Heracles, guided by the unseen hand of Zeus and the relentless lash of Hera's malice, began the famous 12 labors. These were not random acts of monster slaying. They were the cosmic qualification for his ultimate task. Each labor honed the instrument Zeus needed. The Nemean lion proved his crushing brute strength. The Ceryneian hind taught him patience and precision. And finally, the Lernaean hydra granted him the essential weapon. The hydra was a beast of unimaginable toxicity, and Heracles, after slaying the creature, collected its black, potent venom, dipping his arrows into the corrosive fluid. This was the dark key, the necessary reagent that Chiron had foreseen. Now, Heracles possessed the strength, the precision, and the tool needed to shatter the enchanted, mountain-woven bonds of the Titan. His journey to the Caucasus became his final, most solitary labor. He journeyed through desolate, forgotten lands, bearing the immense weight of the cosmic secret, knowing that his final act was not about glory, but about the clandestine survival of his divine father. Imagine the stark landscape, the mountains soaring into the heavens, its peak perpetually shrouded in icy, ominous mist. The solitude was absolute. Heracles, the champion of humanity and the son of Zeus, climbed the winding paths alone, the rhythmic scraping of his sandals against the stone echoing the ancient rhythm of fate. He knew Prometheus was suffering, but he also knew this suffering was the cornerstone of Zeus's fragile peace. When he finally reached the high crag, the scene was one of agonizing stillness. Prometheus was there, unmoving, immense, and silent. The chains were thick and dark, deeply set into the mountain rock. The immense, black-winged vulture was, for a moment, startled by the presence of the demigod, rising on a column of air before circling back, a living, monstrous symbol of Olympian cruelty. Heracles stood at the foot of the rock, not as a rescuer, but as a judge, holding the balance of the cosmos in his hands. He raised his bow, the hydra-venomed arrow notched and ready. The moment was suspended. The suffering Titan, the prepared hero, the circling bird, and the ancient mountain, waiting for the inevitable crack of liberation. But before Heracles could loose the arrow, Prometheus finally spoke, his voice no longer a dry rasp, but a clear, powerful declaration that filled the mountain air, freezing the hero's action. Son of Zeus, the Titan addressed him, using the title with supreme, devastating irony. You come to free me and save your father's throne. Chiron was wise to tell you of the venom, but I see he did not tell you the last, greatest price of my secret. You have the weapon, but you do not possess the necessary key to compel my words. I shall not yield the prophecy until you complete one final, immediate task, one that is not of my chains, but of my tormentor. The final, immediate task Prometheus demanded was a personal one, a necessary act of vengeance that had been postponed for millennia. It was not another labor of strength, but an act of profound, irrevocable violence, designed to settle the Titan's score with Olympus and make Zeus's future peace forever tarnished by a necessary sin. What was the immediate, violent act of retribution Prometheus demanded from Heracles before he would allow the chains to be struck? An act that would shatter the fragile illusion of Olympian morality. We will discover this final, bitter twist of the knife in the next chapter of this deep, mythological sleep journey. The arrow, dipped in the venom of the Lernaean Hydra, trembled in Heracles' mighty hand. He was prepared to strike the chains, but the Titan's chilling, articulate demand froze the hero in place. Prometheus was not interested in simple freedom. He sought immediate, symbolic vengeance against the cruelty of his Olympian tormentor. The answer to the previous chapter's hook is the ultimate act of retributive justice. Prometheus demanded that Heracles slay the vulture, the great, black-winged bird that was the living instrument of Zeus's daily, agonizing punishment. This was a demand not of strength, but of moral complicity. For years, the vulture had been a symbol of Zeus's absolute, unwavering power and lack of mercy. By forcing the hero, Zeus's own son, to destroy the vulture, Prometheus ensured that the king of the gods would forever remember the bitter price of his vengeance. It was a required sin, a public execution of Zeus's cruelty itself. Heracles, who was already steeped in the violence of the labors, understood the cosmic necessity. He lowered his bow from the chains, turned his focus toward the soaring predator, and, with the precision taught by Chiron, let the hydra-venomed arrow fly. The shot was flawless, a thunderous silence following the whistling projectile. The vulture, the eternal symbol of Prometheus's suffering, was struck mid-flight. It plummeted from the sky with a hideous cry, a final screeching challenge to the order of Olympus, its dark wings folding forever against the jagged rocks. The atmosphere of the crag immediately shifted. The air, heavy with the stench of long suffering and fear, was suddenly clear. With the vulture vanquished, Prometheus had his satisfaction, and the first condition for the secret was met. The price of personal vengeance had been paid by the hand of the savior. Only then did the Titan nod, granting Heracles the permission to proceed with the true labor. Heracles approached the rock. Now, he faced the second challenge, the specific ritualistic demand for Gaia's consent. He paused, recalling Chiron's final, urgent lesson on ancient lore. He did not arrogantly blast the chains with a thunderbolt like his father might. Instead, he knelt before the ancient rock, speaking a solemn, formal plea to Gaia, the primordial Earth Mother. He asked for the release of her son, Prometheus, based on the principle of cosmic substitution and the pending sacrifice of Chiron. This act of humility, a recognition of the Earth's original sovereignty, was the key that unlocked the magical hold of the chains. It was a gesture that both honored the Titan's forethought and subtly undermined the Olympian ideology of total conquest. With Gaia's symbolic consent given through the silence of the mountain, Heracles took a deep breath, aimed the venomous arrow at the most crucial link of the mountain-woven chains, and fired. The hydra venom, being the perfect caustic agent against the specific mystical weave of the bonds, did not merely break the iron. It dissolved the magic that bound the Titan to the rock. The chains fractured with a sharp, resonant sound, a sound that echoed not just across the Caucasus, but deep into the halls of Mount Olympus itself, signaling the imminent conclusion of Zeus's greatest fear. Prometheus was finally truly free after countless ages. He stood, a monumental, imposing figure, stretching his long-suffering limbs. The first exchange had occurred. The bird was slain, the chains were broken, and the Titan was liberated. But the plan was not yet complete. The cosmic balance still required the substitution, the death of one immortal and the mortal volunteer. At this point, Chiron, sensing the fracture of the chains across the cosmos, voluntarily renounced his own immortality to Zeus, passing the essence of his eternal life to the dying mortal Pholus, or sometimes another figure known for his self-sacrifice, depending on the tradition, thus ending his agonizing pain and creating the cosmic vacancy necessary for Prometheus's freedom to be sanctioned by fate. With the scales now balanced, Prometheus turned to Heracles, the son of his tormentor, the one who had brought him salvation. The moment of truth had arrived. The Titan, owing his freedom to the hero, was now obliged by cosmic law to fulfill his side of the bargain. He looked at Heracles, and with a voice now strong and clear, he spoke the final, critical, life-saving piece of information Zeus had risked everything for, the name of the goddess whose son would one day overthrow the king of Olympus. He did not deliver it with anger or spite, but with the cold, scientific clarity of an immutable truth. What was the definitive name of the woman, the sea goddess, who was destined to conceive the downfall of the mighty Zeus? And how did this single name immediately change the destiny of Olympus, the seas, and even the fate of Heracles' future friend? The secret is finally about to be revealed. The moment was electric, suspended between the vast silence of the freed cosmos and the thunderous potential of destiny. Prometheus, the forethinker, stood before Heracles, his body free, his mind clear, finally fulfilling the bitter bargain. He looked past the hero, past the mountains, toward the distant, shimmering peak of Olympus, and delivered the single, devastating truth that had terrorized the king of the gods for centuries. The definitive name, the mother of Zeus's inevitable downfall, was indeed the goddess Zeus so relentlessly pursued, Thetis, the beautiful and formidable Nereid. But Prometheus did not just give the name. He provided the precise conditions of the threat, confirming Gaia's original whisper, "The son born to Thetis shall be greater than his father, whether that father be a god or a mortal." This was the true, complete knowledge Zeus needed. The power was not in Thetis herself, but in the destiny of her lineage. If Zeus possessed her, the child would be a god, an Olympian with the strength to overthrow him. If Poseidon or Hades possessed her, the child would likewise become a formidable divine threat to Zeus's supremacy. This single, cold sentence liberated Zeus from his immediate, self-destructive obsession. The moment the chains fractured and Prometheus spoke the name, the truth traveled instantly across the cosmic threads connecting the Titan, the hero, and the king of Olympus. Zeus, who had been anxiously monitoring the events from his throne, acted with an immediate, decisive ruthlessness that was the true measure of his authority. His pursuit of Thetis stopped instantly, brutally. His lust was instantly eclipsed by the overwhelming necessity of self-preservation. The question now was not how to possess her, but how to render her harmless, how to ensure her powerful son would be a great hero for humanity, not a threat to the divine order. The solution devised by Zeus was a calculated act of cosmic social engineering. Thetis would be forcibly married to a mortal man. By coupling her immense divine power with a fleeting human life, the resulting son would be a powerful demigod, a champion, but crucially, not an Olympian threat. The chosen husband was Peleus, king of Phthia, a mortal renowned for his virtue and bravery, ensuring the son would have a noble, mortal upbringing. Thetis, outraged by this betrayal and the forced curtailment of her destiny, fought the decree fiercely, using her metamorphic powers to shift shape, trying to escape the unwanted union. But the will of Zeus, backed by the terrifying clarity of the prophecy, was absolute. The grand wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the most famous mortal-immortal union in mythology, was orchestrated by Zeus himself as a public declaration that the cycle of succession had been broken. It was a massive celebratory facade over a desperate, forced political act. The hero born from this enforced union would be Achilles, the greatest warrior of the mortal age, fulfilling the prophecy's requirement to be greater than his father, Peleus, but safely beneath the divine throne of Zeus. Heracles, standing before the newly freed Titan, had fulfilled his complex role. He had secured his father's throne, earned Prometheus's freedom, and guaranteed Chiron's release from suffering. The cycle of fear was broken. But Prometheus, now a free agent, had one final, symbolic sting for the king of the gods. He refused to allow Zeus to claim absolute, total victory. As Prometheus prepared to depart, he picked up a small fragment of the chain that had bound him, a piece of the mountain-woven bronze. He then affixed this fragment to his finger, linking it to a tiny piece of the Caucasus stone. This action, known as the Ring of Prometheus, was a clever, enduring symbol. By wearing the chain fragment, Prometheus would eternally fulfill the condition of being bound to the mountain, even in his freedom. This meant Zeus could not claim he had simply freed the Titan. Prometheus himself ensured his technical compliance with the original sentence while walking free. It was a final, witty, and permanent humiliation. Zeus would reign eternal, but he would forever be reminded that he achieved it not through power, but through a humiliating, three-way negotiation with his prisoner, his suffering friend, and his own illegitimate son. The prophecy was averted, the throne secured, and the cosmic order preserved. But the cost was immense. The sacrifice of Chiron, the life of a mortal substitute, the violation of a powerful goddess, and the eternal, visible reminder worn on the Titan's finger. The king of Olympus had saved his throne, but the fear of that one Titan, Prometheus, was now woven into the very fabric of his immortal peace. But the story holds one final, lingering shadow. What was the fate of the mortal man who willingly took Chiron's mortality to complete the cosmic balance? And what was the immediate, unexpected consequence of Thetis's forced marriage that would eventually lead to the destruction of the very mortal kingdom that harbored Zeus's greatest champion? The consequence of escaping one prophecy often creates a new, equally devastating one, and we are about to see the birth of the epic war that stemmed directly from Zeus's calculated fear. Zeus had secured his throne, but in the realm of myth, every averted prophecy casts a longer, darker shadow. The forced marriage of Thetis and Peleus, orchestrated to produce a safe hero and preserve Olympian rule, was meant to be the final, triumphant act of Zeus's strategic genius. Instead, it became the genesis of a catastrophe that would shatter the mortal world and forever prove that fate, though temporarily diverted, always demands its due price. The magnificent wedding feast held for Peleus and Thetis was attended by all the Olympians, all save one. Eris, the minor goddess of discord and strife, was deliberately excluded from the celebrations. She was the cosmic entity Zeus had banished, fearing her chaotic influence would spoil the fragile, celebratory facade he had constructed. Her exclusion was the fatal misstep, the loose thread that would unravel the fabric of peace. Outraged by the slight, Eris appeared above the wedding hall and cast a single golden apple onto the banquet table. Simple, polished, and shimmering with dangerous intent, the apple bore a single, elegant inscription: "To the fairest." This was the immediate, unexpected consequence of the wedding, the cosmic butterfly effect of Zeus's fear. The apple of discord was instantly claimed by the three most powerful goddesses: Hera, Zeus's queen; Athena, goddess of wisdom; and Aphrodite, goddess of love. Each believed herself to be the fairest and demanded that Zeus settle the dispute. Trapped by his own political necessity, Zeus refused to judge the matter directly, knowing that choosing one would incur the eternal hatred of the other two, destabilizing his hard-won domestic peace. Instead, he deflected the judgment to a mortal man, Paris of Troy, a prince renowned for his simple, pastoral wisdom. This act of deferral led to the infamous judgment of Paris, where the three goddesses bribed the mortal. Hera offered him political power over all Asia, Athena offered him military glory and wisdom, and Aphrodite offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite, setting in motion the chain of events that culminated in the abduction of Helen and the inevitable Trojan War, the most destructive conflict of the age. The terrible irony was complete. Zeus had averted the prophecy that threatened his immortal throne, only to unleash a devastating war that would claim the life of his own greatest mortal champion, Achilles, the son of Thetis, and destroy the very moral order he relied upon. The war was the cosmic tax on Zeus's survival, a direct consequence of his fear of the one Titan. The entire mortal world was thrown into chaos because a god was afraid to name the fairest and, years prior, was afraid to face the truth of his destiny. Meanwhile, high above the devastated mortal plains, the players in the original drama found their new equilibrium. Prometheus, wearing his bronze ring, walked the earth free, serving as a constant, living, symbolic reminder of Zeus's debt. Chiron, the noble centaur, had found his peace in the stars, sacrificing his immortality for the cause, his absence a permanent moral stain on Zeus's reign. And the final, cruel detail. Atlas, the titan whose freedom Prometheus had used as his primary leverage, remained utterly imprisoned, still shouldering the massive, crushing weight of the heavens. His continued, silent suffering was the final, non-negotiable cost of Zeus's rule, the enduring sacrifice that guaranteed the stability of the Olympian universe. Prometheus had secured his own liberty, but he knew that Zeus would never fully trust him, nor could he afford to release the ultimate symbol of Titan defeat. The fear that chilled Zeus was now a complex web of obligation, sacrifice, and unintended mortal consequence. Zeus had won, but he won a victory that tasted perpetually of ashen irony. He was safe from his son, but forever entangled in the fallout of his fear. The king of the gods looked down upon the burning towers of Troy and knew the devastating truth. The cost of his fear was paid in mortal blood. The entire world was his chessboard, and every move to protect his kingship simply shifted the location of the collateral damage. But did Prometheus's final, ultimate revenge stop there? Did the Titan truly settle for a symbolic ring and the start of a mortal war? Was there one final, devastating truth hidden within the very secret given to Zeus, a consequence of the prophecy itself that Zeus never anticipated? The final revelation of Prometheus's true mastery awaits in the last, concluding chapter. The silence that followed Prometheus's departure from the Caucasus crag was the most profound peace Olympus had ever known, but it was a peace built upon a foundation of eternal debt. Zeus was safe, his throne secured, and the cycle of succession broken. He had achieved the impossible, but the final, devastating truth that Prometheus had withheld, the ultimate philosophical revenge that Zeus never anticipated, was not another name or another condition, but the realization of the prophecy's true, deep meaning. The prophecy was never just a mechanical threat. It was a moral critique. Prometheus knew that the son of Thetis would be greater than his father not because of physical strength, but because of moral purity and inherent nobility. Zeus, by forcing the humiliation of Thetis, by orchestrating the sacrifice of Chiron, and by needing the intervention of a mortal hero, his own son, Heracles, had proved the Titan's original point. The Olympians, despite their power, were compromised by their own passions, paranoia, and tyranny. Zeus had saved his reign, but he had lost the moral high ground forever. Prometheus's true victory was that he forced Zeus to become the architect of compromise, a figure who ruled not by undisputed divine right, but by political manipulation and the calculated exploitation of others' suffering. The bronze ring on Prometheus's finger was the constant, visible reminder that Zeus's victory was conditional, not absolute. The fear that truly chilled Zeus was not the lightning bolt of a future son, but the cold, unassailable wisdom of a Titan who saw the hypocrisy at the heart of the Olympian regime. Prometheus had been freed not by Zeus's mercy, but by Zeus's fear, and the terms of that freedom forever validated the Titan's initial defiance. This was the final, inescapable truth that resonated through the quiet halls of Olympus. Zeus would reign, but he would reign with the memory of his own moral weakness exposed by his captive. The king of the gods understood this final, spiritual humiliation, and it was a wound that no thunderbolt could ever heal. Now, let us consider the fate of the small figures caught in this immense cosmic calculus. The mortal substitute, the man who voluntarily accepted death so that the cosmic scales could be balanced and Chiron could find peace, passed quietly into the underworld. His name is barely whispered in the histories, a symbol of the pure, unadulterated sacrifice required to secure the selfish survival of a god. He remains the most profound moral contrast to Zeus's paranoia. Chiron, the noble teacher, found his release. His immortal essence was not destroyed but transformed. Zeus, in an act of respect and perhaps remorse, placed his figure in the heavens as the constellation Centaurus, ensuring that Chiron's wisdom would forever guide mortals and that his noble sacrifice would never be forgotten. His light serves as a permanent, silent memorial to the cost of Zeus's crown. As for Prometheus, he did not seek power or revenge. He used his knowledge to continue his work, guiding humanity towards greater enlightenment, his freedom secured by his own intellect. He remains the great symbol of defiance against arbitrary authority, the eternal counterpoint to the thunder god. His freedom was the final, enduring testament to the power of foresight over force. The ultimate victory belonged to the Titan who understood that to rule forever, Zeus would have to risk everything he claimed to stand for. The Trojan War, the inevitable mortal chaos that resulted from the averted prophecy, was merely the collateral damage, the final payment on the Titan's debt. Zeus was safe on Olympus, but the cost was a permanent, enduring guilt woven into the tapestry of his immortal reign. The Titan's mind was the true weapon, and it was a weapon Zeus could never defeat. The story, however, leaves us with one final, haunting thought, a deeper layer of Prometheus's foresight. In some ancient traditions, Prometheus possessed a second, even grander prophecy, the knowledge that the age of the Olympians itself was finite. He knew that even if Zeus escaped the fate of his father and grandfather, the time would eventually come when a new, colder empire, Rome, would subsume the Greek gods, renaming them and diminishing their power. His true vision was that the divine era was transient, and that the future belonged not to the gods of the mountain, but to the enlightened, fire-wielding humanity he had championed. By forcing Zeus to focus entirely on Thetis, Prometheus ensured the Olympians missed the far greater, more distant threat, the inevitable rise of the mortal world, made possible by the very gift of fire. Thus, the Titan's final act of mastery was the realization that Zeus's fear was misplaced. He feared his son, when he should have feared time itself and the unstoppable force of human progress. This is the greatest sleep aid of all, the realization that all empires, even divine ones, eventually yield to the unstoppable currents of fate and change. The king of the gods was afraid of a Titan, but the Titan was merely a messenger of a far greater, colder truth. And so, the king of Olympus reigned on, his thunder echoing across a universe where his moral authority was subtly, permanently undermined by the memory of the chained Titan. He had escaped his fate, but he had proven his nature. This is the story of not just why Zeus feared one Titan, but how that fear defined the very foundation of the Olympian age. The silence now descends upon the peak of Olympus, a silence where the cosmic conflicts of gods and the suffering of heroes finally merge into the peace of ages. The fate of the world is secured, though the price was steep. May the wisdom of the forethinker and the stillness of the centaur star guide you now into the deepest, most restful slumber. Close your eyes, let the echoes of the chains and the thunder fade away, and drift into the peaceful, ancient sleep of the cosmos, knowing that even the mightiest gods are ultimately subject to the power of truth. Good night.